Okay, yeah, sure. There's your intro. Cool. I don't have to say anything. Say mine for next week.
Damn it, I'm so used to doing this to Abraham. Oh no! Someone else is roasting me on this show now. Hi, this is 2Fast2Movie. I'm Ben, that's Jose. And today we are going to be talking about The Legends of Vox Machina, episodes 7 through 9, Scanbo, A Silver Tongue, and The Tide of Bones, as well as some other outside elements, including the show's general reception, critic reviews, and the craziness that is this adaptation even existing and what it means as an adaptation. Now, before we get into the big meat and potatoes of this, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We're almost at 500 subscribers, Jose. Did you know that?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, I said it like 3 times before this. And then at 500, we get the community feature, which is going to be a pretty big deal for us.
So do us a favor. When this video is published, make sure it's already at 500, so we kind of a little bit look like
it. That way this and like another video that's being published 2 weeks from now will be totally factually incorrect. Also, if you like these kinds of reviews, we do other things for Attack on Titan. And they're
finished, right?
Huh?
No, that's Demon Slayer. Sorry. Too many shows. Too many shows.
There's so.
Yesterday was a day. Okay.
I know. This is like such a good season of television, though. We have it. Pretty much every single thing that like a nerd could possibly want happening on TV at the same time. Also, yesterday was the Super Bowl, but we're not concerned with that.
No, that's another channel.
That is
not in the works, but
that is never something this channel will ever be covering. Is the Super Bowl.
I'd sell on mine, but I'm not going to do anything about it either. So.
At this point though, Jose, I just got to go in, and we had these 3 episodes come out.
Mm-hmm.
How is, again, from a non-critter standpoint, how did these feel? Like, what are your general notes on just how the show has evolved in these last couple episodes?
I think it's still keeping on its pace like it's been doing for a good while. I would say a little bit on the not really softer side, but like, kind of a not full downward trend, but just
There's a slight decline in quality.
I think so. Because
really? Okay.
I know we'll probably talk about this in a bit, but like with the most recent episode, Tide of Bone, I'm pretty sure they said fuck maybe more times than I can count.
Yeah, and that's kind of where this is. That's like one of my big pet peeves, and this has been a pet peeve of a lot of people in the comments. Just going back to our first video of this, is the dialogue is probably the weakest point of the show. The story's really good. There's a couple pacing things that we'll kind of talk about, but overall, I'm baffled, if I'm being honest, because I love Critical Role. I do genuinely really like this show. It recently hit certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes and kept its 100. Now, Rotten Tomatoes is a pretty good gauge of figuring out if a movie's actually good or not.
Especially in the public side.
Yeah, especially on the public side. However, the 100 that it kept was in the professional reviewer side, which these are people that, like, this is what they do. This is their main thing. And I kind of wonder if I do think that it deserves the certified fresh. I'm not 100% sure that it deserves the flawless 100. That's something that has kind of thrown me off, because there are critiques that you can make of this show, and I feel like a 100 should be just that, a 100.
I definitely agree. I enjoy the show a lot, especially not just from the nerdy role-playing side of me, or recognizing, of course, most of the characters, the voice actors,
yeah.
But I do think the show is, as far as rating goes, is really high. But I think it's still like high, like maybe high 80s or 90s.
Yeah.
But also I don't know much about like the ratings with Rotten Tomatoes, or 100s, but 100 does feel really high.
Yeah, 100 is something that's supposed to be flawless. That being said, I have kind of noticed that as of late, I don't know if it's just become a lot easier to become a Rotten Tomatoes reviewer, but Rotten Tomatoes, it used to be like you could tell that the fan reviews versus the professional reviews, there was a very big difference.
Okay.
That being said, like, even going as far back as when The Last Jedi released, I think The Last Jedi, when that released, was the last time I saw the tomato meter differ from the audience meter. on major films.
That was the last time?
That's the last time I've ever seen that because again, that movie was certified fresh when it launched. Because
Oh shit, I did not know that.
Yeah, critics really loved it. It was fans that were able to poke holes in it because, well, first of all,
They stabbed that shit to the ground.
Yeah, well, there was also a lot of toxicity in the Star Wars fan base that was like, yes, there were actually legitimate critiques of that movie that I will stand by. However, there was also just a lot of very bad behavior from a very toxic fandom that was involved in that.
Yeah, fandom's just kind of going to shit really now and then.
Well, that's actually one of the most interesting things in my mind. Like if we're talking from like a media studies point, Marshall McLuhan, who like was the big media studies guy and like is the person like from the 70s, and people still cite him. He's the reason why we think of active versus passive media, the way that we consume it, the way that media is connected, and the fact that beforehand, there was never really truly a dialogue between the creator and the consumer. At least not in the standard that we have now. There were reviewers that were able to act as megaphones and gatekeepers. However, there was never Twitter. That just wasn't a factor in media back in the day. So like you could say fuck you to a fandom and be able to get away with it. But now, like, you really have to play into what the fandom wants.
You can mention the fandom, and all of a sudden, you just feel the pressure.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, not even, like, intentionally mentioning it. All of a sudden, it's just there.
And this is just an element of a fandom of the world that we now live in. The fact that media is so interconnected, and that there is really no gatekeeping anymore as far as who can create what, and also who gets their voice heard. And that is a major element in all this. That being said, that was a large tangent on just
as we do on 2Fast2Movie.
We like to go off our show plans. However, one of the main things here that, again, just going back to this doesn't necessarily deserve a 100, but definitely it does deserve certified fresh, is the dialogue got weaker these 3 episodes.
Yeah, like I said, I definitely felt it in this last episode. Swear words were thrown around left and right, honestly. And yeah.
Well, and I think this is something that, like, it is usually considered in a writer's room, like, a sign of an amateur writer. And I want to make something clear. It's not that swears are bad, it's that they lose their impact when they are used too much.
Right.
Like, a good rule of thumb is, like, you only want to have, like, an F-bomb once per episode or once per show. And usually you want to save it for a moment of impact. Now, a thing that's going on here is they're also trying to adapt these characters' personalities. And a tabletop RPG stream is not the same thing as a writer's room.
Yeah.
They're not censoring themselves. They're reacting like how real people would react. So there's going to be F-bombs thrown around a lot. And Pike, who is honestly the main offender in the last episode, and I love her, and I love Ashley Johnson, she was just F-bomb, F-bomb, F-bomb.
Yeah.
Which...
that really felt way too off for me.
Yeah, it feels... And I understand what they were doing, because part of her arc these last 3 episodes is choosing to still be a degenerate, but a degenerate, a god, whatever that means. And I have some other issues with how that story is delivered. However, it is supposed to be in character for her. Now, that being said, could they maybe have let that moment have impact by, not dropping F-bombs from Scanlan, Vax, and pretty much everyone else in the party, so that when she came in and was like, "What's up, fuckers?" it actually had some impact? Yes.
It's funny because I'm thinking about another show, Doom Patrol, with Robot Man played by oh my god, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. The guy from The Mummy. If you remember,
there's a lot of
there's like the main character. Yeah.
Oh, Brendan Fraser. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, I want to assume, because from what I remember of it, which is still going, but his character was an asshole, pure asshole. So a lot of times when they show Robot Man in a show, you'll hear him just saying fucking shit almost every other time. But I don't know if it's because of the way that character is meant to be made compared to like either the fantasy setting or as what we expect. Yeah. But it feels very different from Pike and
Well,
even Grog, honestly.
honestly, a lot of that has to do with contrast. So, again, when you're designing characters and you're designing dialogue, you want to make sure that they're not all living within the same sort of space within how dialogue is presented. And this show does do that really well with everything except swearing.
Yeah.
That is the only thing that the show has a problem with, because like, yes, we have been decent. Like, swearing is no longer as big of a deal as it used to be, like 10, even 20 years ago. It is no longer you drop an F-bomb and then suddenly the FCC is up your ass. It is way more chill. And we're way more desensitized to it. That being said, it still has the psychological impact that it does. We know that swear words can change our pain tolerance. We know that saying something that we're not supposed to say or is supposed to feel derogatory in some way has a psychological impact on us no matter what, based off of how we perceive language. So when you're just throwing them around all the time, it just doesn't work the way that it feels like it should.
Yeah, especially if it's like 5-6 times within a minute in the same scene.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, like, if it's all coming from one character, like the character in Doom Patrol, his name I just forgot, but I think is a good example.
What to say, Robot Man? That's
Robot
fine.
Man. That is how you would effectively do that, because odds are he's the only person in that scene that's dropping all those F-bombs and everything in there. And that's what makes that character stand out and so endearing. That being said, one of the things that I have mixed feelings about going into all this is how the magic system is a little bit more fleshed out, but also a little bit weaker. And this is something that we talked about on our first episode covering this.
Yeah. This was actually something, one of the ones I wanted to bring up to you because to me, it just looks cool.
It looks cool, yeah.
And while I have a general good knowledge of the D&D mechanics and stuff like that, it's hard for me to kind of see it portrayed, like, I guess the word would be accurately, as opposed to the game system.
Yeah, and I don't think that they need to do it accurately. However, I think fans will agree that the magic system becomes an integral storytelling element within the plot of this later on.
Okay.
So the big issue here is, and they're starting with good things. We see that spells can be learned from scrolls. However, unlike Dungeons and Dragons, once you get the scroll, you keep it and you can learn the spell from it. So we see that with Scanlan when he successfully polymorphs himself into a Triceratops. It said rhinoceros. That's wrong. We see that instead, though, he's casting one-off spells with potions, like the Dragon's Breath and Blink. And then where this kind of gets a little muddly, actually, the thing that I really like is the differentiation between holy magic and nature magic that we can see when we have to compare the healing powers of Keyleth and the healing powers of Pike.
Yeah.
Which we're going to get into when we cover those individual episodes today, because those are big moments that deserve their own major conversation. But where it gets kind of still a little bit muddled up is when new characters are kind of learning new spells on the fly that we just haven't seen and have not been really connected with before this. The two things I can think of are the immense sort of power differential when Pike comes back, which has its plot purposes and its reason for being in the show, so we are going to talk about that. And this is not an addendum on this. It's just this could be confusing later down the line of the story. But there is also the element of Keyleth learning a new power in the middle of Tide and Bone. So we're going to talk about both of those things when we get to those episodes. And then the other bits that we want that, of course, like over the portion of this, Pike gets a lot of screen time. We get a lot more character development from her. Percy, of course, is the star of the fucking show, and we get very good character development for him, so the show's going the absolute right way. But then there is Keyleth and Vax. I had this gut feeling when I watched the episode, and then talking to a bunch of fans that felt the same way as me. This was rushed.
Oh, yeah. Because, like, I just saw Tide of Bone today, like, early today. And when Vax is all of a sudden, hey, by the way, I love you. I was like, I wanted to pause the video and walk away because I was just. And Keelan points this out literally like 10 seconds later.
Look,
we're in the middle of a battle. What the heck?
And we can take the time to talk about this now because this is an important facet of this being adapted. That is because, first of all, this is a game that had been going on for a long time before the stream.
Right.
So all the seeds were planted in game for this to happen. They had done the character work prior, and at this moment, when this happened, they had both. I believe in the campaign, it was either mid-fight where it looks like they were all going to die, or post-fight where they almost all died. And
I mean, both are reasonable, but
both are reasonable from a character standpoint. I actually think that the problem here, though, isn't necessarily the pace at which it was introduced, but the amount of on-the-noseness that we experience through this. So I am talking to a couple other fans and other people that watch the show. There's one thing that always kind of stuck out as a problem with the Keyleth and Vax relationship and how it was portrayed, which is how much devoted screen time that they have had together, having like explicitly romantic beats. And it's almost in every single moment, it's in a way that does not progress the story except for progressing their relationship.
Yeah.
Like first episode, we devote screen time to them sort of picking each other up, and nothing happens in the story except for the fact that you're introducing these two characters are kind of have a crush on each other. The time that this works best, however, is when Vex is tearing Vex is tearing into Vax. The fucking twins are going to be the death of me in the show, about saying, hey, you should not get too close to Keyleth. Like, this is bad. You need to not be close with you should not be too close with these people. Because ultimately it's you and I going together. And what they're doing is they're weaponizing the romantic intention that Vex sees in Vax into conflict. Mm-hmm. And that's a moment where you're not just introducing a relationship, but you're also building conflict, which is the reason why it feels natural in the show.
Okay.
So like we see those moments and it comes off really well, but then as we go further and we go back to the more on the nose stuff, it always feels like kind of weird and out of place until we get to this final moment, and then we're all Keyleth in that moment going, why?
That being said, though, I think the on the nose points, I think they do hit well. I think also because, like, given, the starting in the middle of the game, that the way they handled it or like hinted at, it feels a little bit natural, but also like that work to like basically say, hey, these two might like each other and might be a thing and all that. So like, even though they've had however much character interaction before the campaign, you still get the vibe that they have.
The thing that's interesting to me, first of all, there are a couple of necessity reasons why they had to do this. Again, I mentioned this in the past because we've talked about it. Their relationship is extremely important to the plot later down the line. There is some great inner party conflict that happens because of choices that both of them make that have to do with their relationship. And that is something that will be coming up sooner than we think, so they have to get it in on this sort of deadline. At the same time, though, there is another relationship in this show where, for fans who know, but for fans who don't, you'll be pleasantly surprised, that is appropriately being sort of simmered up and being a lot more slow burn. You're free to take any guesses at
Galen Pike.
That one is being done a lot more appropriately. There is definitely some romantic tension there.
That's the one I got. So
that's the only one you got.
Mostly because I don't want to really picture Grog with anyone. and that's
I
one of
don't
the
think.
okay.
Yeah, no, that is a little cursed. I'll give it that.
Not to give too much information, I came across this like Steam game about an orc and a massage, and that was it. That's all I'm describing. That's all I'm describing.
Heard about this recently. Oh no.
Okay.
But with that, those issues, there are some issues of adaptation that I think play into those characters. And again, this is not an indictment on the show. This is something that I had a feeling was going to be a problem when I first rewatched the Briarwood arc after the show was announced 3 years ago. So this is something that also kind of presented itself as a problem within the campaign for the same exact reasons of all this work was done off screen.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, the last sort of bit to talk about on this end is there's a lot of fucking changes in these 3 episodes. And I think that they are for the better. And it is namely in the changes of order. So the most important thing here is the battle to take back Cassandra did not happen here. It was Scanlan. It was a political element that was taken out of this entire arc, where the Duke and one other character were essentially the political sort of barons over this land that ruled everything in the Briarwood stead. And instead of starting the rebellion by getting Cassandra back, they started the rebellion by taking these two people out simultaneously. And Scanlan was indeed sent over to go do that by himself. However, the other fight was not as memorable. It was just them storming a castle and killing this one dude. That being said, the fight to get Cassandra back, where her throat does get slit, happens later when they are actually storming the castle themselves. Professor Anders and Cassandra are in the castle, and that creates a plot development where another character that they were after and holding hostage gets away. And now that they've changed that, that is going to have to play out somewhat differently, as it was originally Cassandra's throat being slashed that caused that chance for an escape. And then there's another major set of events that happens to 2 characters that happen completely different in the game than what actually happened here. So they made some big strides as far as changing the story for this reason. And I think we should just jump into the meat and potatoes of each episode, which are going to be relatively quick. So to start it off, we have Scanbo. This episode opens up with a flashback to Professor Anders teaching young Percy and Cassandra about Whitestone and Residuum. Vox Machina needs a distraction in order to break into Professor Anders' manor and save Cassandra. So Scanlan goes on a solo mission to burn down the Duke's house and cause a distraction. This is an interesting episode. I do not think that, I personally, this is my opinion, I just want to make that known, I don't think that this episode would have been made if it weren't for the hordes of comments that were left on the original Scanbo session.
Oh, really?
There was the number one thing that you would see if you go back and you rewatch Campaign 1 after they announced this, was people being like, I cannot wait to see Scanlan turn into a Triceratops and solo an entire manor. Because that happened actually kind of verbatim. The only difference is, like, this version of Scanlan got his ass kicked. Sam Riegel, the player, did it flawlessly. Like, Sam Riegel as a player is probably one of the most clutch members of it, not just Vox Machina, but Critical Role in general. He is great when you give him a caster character, and like he's even better when he is just in charge of coming up with a plan.
So I definitely gonna watch that part too. Fuck.
Yeah. And this is like, I just wanted to make that known this is probably the sole reason why this episode was so dedicated to Scanlan and also got the name Scanbo, of course, for Rambo. The other important plot element that I want to pick your brain on here is from that flashback in the beginning. They go over a material that's called that is just called Whitestone, but also has something that is called residuum in it. Professor Anders even goes to say that he's been studying this and nearly blows up a vial in Cassandra's hands. What are your general thoughts on what this might be and its connection to Anders and everything else that's happening in town?
I gotta be honest, I don't really have much of an idea, but from the sound and from what it was like shown, I feel like it would be one of those like main prophets of Whitestone of some sort. So like I want to say like a super worked on gunpowder, like if just an example,
Okay. Yeah.
like and then like trade markets and like stuff like that. I don't know how to word it right.
No. It's you're for those that know, but you are half on the mark. There's a couple things missing there, but it is. I was kind of curious that they took until this point to introduce this as a plot mechanic. So originally, when we go into the Briarwoods, we know about Whitestone beforehand because Percy tells us.
Okay.
That being said, it would be kind of boring to have Percy just tell us everything in the show, so it makes sense why they did it in flashback format right before we get introduced to Anders. We don't see any more residuum this episode, in this block of episodes, but I will be shocked if it does not come up as a more important element later down the line. This material, though, does become important not just in this campaign, but has been featured in all 3 campaigns.
Oh.
So Whitestone is a pretty big deal in that regard. So the next episode, A Silver Tongue. After they storm Anders' castle, Anders slits the throat of Cassandra, and a fight ensues while Keyleth races to save her life. They battle with Professor Anders, who first throws constructs at them in the form of animated armor, then dominates Grog, then the whole party in order to kill Percy. Percy, however, buys some time by essentially getting Anders to gloat and playing a little bit to his ego, which he certainly has. Then Percy's eyes turn a yellow and black. He trick shot shoots off Anders' tongue, which was a blessing to see.
It was a real good scene.
And then it proceeds to walk over, blow his head off. Grog captures the tongue, and they send a signal into the sky, and shit starts getting really bad for next episode. Meanwhile, though, Pike talks to her literal god, the Everlight, and has a conversation about her conviction to go down the righteous path, and has to make a choice in order to keep her light. I want to know your thoughts on this episode before I jump into this.
Well, I'm glad that, as opposed to like the last episode, where we said it's a believe in yourself kind of bullshit thing, that this is kind of more so like straying off the path rather than internal issues.
So I had an interesting thing, and I don't really 100% like what they did with the story here. Now, again, we mentioned this last episode. This is something that was done because Ashley Johnson could not physically be there. And however, she's still watching the campaign while it's live, or at least the VODs are up. And all this stuff with the Briarwood's happening, and she wants to start playing again. Homegirl would stay up to 2 or 3 a.m. every Thursday at this point so that she could play the game and would have a call time of 4 a.m. the next day. Yeah, she was going hard on this in order to be there, and Matt had to invent something where the Temple of Sarenrae that she was currently patching up would essentially astral project her there so she could help her friends. And this is how she got to this point, and that's what they're adapting here. So there's a reason why they have to adapt it, and of course it pays off very well in the next episode. My issue with this, though, is the illusion of choice that Pike has. Because it seems to me that the internal conflict was not necessarily a believing in herself, but because she had conflict in the first place, which I kind of understand. However, ultimately, the second she made a choice to either be with the church or just to be with her friends, she would have gotten her power back. Is kind of what I'm understanding from this.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Because, like, with the conflict either being not knowing her place or, like, just struggling to just I understand or feel her magic or anything like that, it's like one of those set your mind clear, have your path like laid out for you, and then you're pretty much good to go.
I wish, and I really wish, that they showed some of this internal conflict before Delilah Briarwood hit her with that magic and broke her holy symbol. Because my issue is that I feel like this conflict was invented rather than actually established to be part of this character before this. There's plenty of, we get a lot more Pike backstory. Well, not even backstory. We get a lot more of like Pike's inner character once she starts losing her magic. However, we're not actually, like, if you told me that she was having trouble deciding whether she would be part of the church or continue to be with her friends before this, I would have guessed that was something going on in her head.
Yeah.
Which for me is just, that's one of the reasons why I'm like, this show has problems. It is extremely entertaining, but this is just a major problem that I have with this episode. That being said, the moments that this actually does work and the reasons why it worked really well from an episode structure standpoint is because the entire time we are watching Vox Machina getting their ass kicked and their healer is gone. Namely, Keyleth having to solo healing by herself. Going into that, I was not expecting them to even show Keyleth healing someone or attempting, and I legit thought that they killed Cassandra for a moment. Because I was like, there's no way she can do this.
Yeah, I had that same kind of thought as well.
And like, I know how the story is supposed to go. I've done this before. Like, the entire time I'm just like, no, that's not right. She's not supposed to die. And then, of course, she didn't. But it was quite the time. I was fully expecting Cassandra to stay dead, especially in that moment. I will say I did love the pressing of dirt and leaves into her throat as like components for the spell, though.
That's cool. Yeah.
There was, to me, that's one of those moments where like where everything sort of just started to come back together and just like, yes, that's explaining more of her magic system. And then ice hands happens and I'm like, that's okay. So what's the consistency here? That's gonna be a thing.
I don't know, man. Druids. That's all I can
druids,
say. Yeah.
Man.
Listen, I only know druids in World of Warcraft, not in D&D, so that's a very different field.
Really never? Have you not done a druid?
I have not done a druid yet, not yet.
Oh, they're fun. I mean, they're a thing.
I've thought about it, just haven't done it yet.
Bards are better, but you druid people are entitled to your druid opinions. That being said, with this episode going after that, I think the only other important thing to talk about is we get a bigger dose of No Mercy Percy.
Oh, yeah.
Now we're starting to learn more, and most importantly, we've learned about how the gun was built in the previous episode of this. It came to Percy in a dream. What are you thinking this is now?
All right, so I got to be real with you. When I was editing the last episode, I was trying to find some good images.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Buddy.
I read a little bit. I didn't go full into detail because I was like, oh, no. And thankfully, I already forgot the name of...
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's already good.
Unfortunately, you know the answer to this now?
Well, I know what's happening to him.
Gotcha.
I just forgot what it is, and I don't know why.
Okay, so I will no longer be able to ask Jose that question.
But yeah, as far as the gun part is, which was I forgot it had a name, I think.
Yeah, so the gun itself is just called Pepperbox. There's there's nothing inherently special about the gun's name, at least from a historical standpoint, because pepper boxes were real. However, Percy invented the gun. That's an important note. There are no guns in Exandria except for what Percy has with him and in the bag of holding.
All right. So I'm going to assume the thing either sent the image or like, like gave him the idea basically.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden went to it.
Yeah. So Percy received it in a dream, and it is extremely likely that the thing that gave him that dream is also what is manifesting in that smoke, the glowing bullets, and the names on the barrel.
Yeah.
Once we get to the end of the season or at the full reveal, I will happily talk about what the mechanics of that in-game were, because we are very close to that.
Cool, because that picture was actually a really cool fan art.
It is very good. It is very good stuff. Also, the thing I love about, well, it kind of sucks for if you're now a, I can't believe I'm going to say this, if you're now a anime only Legends of Vox Machina, you now have so many spoilers that you have to dodge in just the fan art world alone.
Welcome to the Wii world.
Yeah, be warned, if you're not already an anime fan, you now have to do what all of us had to do for Attack on Titan that were not reading the manga.
Attack on Titan, My Hero.
Oh, My Hero one sucks to have to dodge.
Yeah, I had to meet the Discord server for that but all right, come on. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, well, welcome to the club. And then going into the last episode of this, The Tide of Bone. So, again, Keelah sends up that signal of the giant Arolo crest after they finish their break-in, and all hell breaks loose in the town as a army of undead invade the city. Percy then watches his childhood friend Archibald be dissected by the Duke, and after that he steps up as leader for a brief last stand at the Sun Tree. Then, as all hope is lost, Vox Machina receives a Deus Ex Machina of Pike Trickfoot coming down like fucking Thor, literally from that scene in Endgame. Not Endgame, Infinity War. It almost felt verbatim, which was awesome.
Yeah. That is in the script, by the way. He literally wrote that right here, like fucking Thor. I'm not even kidding.
And then the Duke is killed by the people of the town. She provides a great way for people to combat it with her holy magic. And as the battle calms down, Vox Machina cuts their way through to Whitestone Keep, and they invade the castle. And then as they are coming in, there is a strange woman in one of the cages that Percy is about to show no mercy to.
All right, so real quick, I want to say a few things. One, there's a moment where Percy says that Archibald gave his life. He didn't really give his life, but it was like he just ended up dying.
No, what's funny is, he was fighting for a purpose.
Yeah, no,
so he was kind of giving his life. He did not he was not willingly sacrificing himself.
Well, no, I know. I just mean like when you think, when I think of the words like gave his life, there's like they're literally prepared, like expecting to die like right that moment.
Yeah, exactly. Where in this one, he was legitimately trying to bout out with the Duke in order to save Scanlan's life.
Right.
He still did give his life, just not willingly. I'm sure Archibald would have loved to stay alive. There is a major change that I want to talk about here, though. Neither Archibald nor the Duke died in the original.
Oh, really?
Neither of them died. As a matter of fact, Archibald wasn't even like Percy's childhood friend. He was more or less just an old guard. They had way less chemistry going into it. But they made that change for Percy's character growth and to just add a nice face. And also, Archibald.
They just want Percy to lose everything. That's my vibe right now.
Yeah, they do. If you know, you know. The big piece there is that was not in there. And one other thing that we neglected to talk about, but is critically important, there was a flashback this episode in the opening sequence.
Oh, wait. Oh, yeah. You're right.
Yeah. And we got to see the creation of Lord Briarwood as a vampire. So we see a little bit more of the book, and we see a undead face pop out of the ceiling as he gets turned into a vampire.
Creepy as fuck, by the way.
Yeah, all that stuff happens. I have myself and some other fans have some thoughts on this because I think that there was some important iconography missing. However, what are you think? Has this changed or confirmed any of your previous theories about the book and Delilah?
It has not, mostly because I'm still a bit clueless about what exactly their plans are and like what exactly the book is either not necessarily referencing, but like hoping to cause
accomplish.
What to accomplish. Yeah, exactly.
There is a line that is uttered somewhere where about their timeline needing to accelerate it, and I forget if it's their purpose or their debt that she talks about, but there is something that it seems that they believe that they belong to some sort of higher power with the deeds that they're performing based off of the dialogue that is presented. And previously, you made a couple comments about potentially her being a warlock or a couple other elements that could possibly tie into that.
Yeah, I know Pike said in the previous previous set of episodes that it was either a dark mage or dark wizard, something like that. Yeah, I don't know if that's like an official thing or not, but or if it's just her assumption.
Funny because I don't know if there's such thing as a dark wizard. She would certainly fit the bill of a necromancer,
right?
I would be very curious as to if they would ever sort of explore the warlock angle of it a little bit more as a possibility. But again, they're not trying to present. They're not trying to present these characters as classes for the most part.
Right.
However, we'll definitely see some bleed over. So we can deduce that she is a mage of some kind as to whether or not her powers are based off of a pact or her own knowledge, and perhaps her own knowledge overlapping with the discovery of this extremely powerful being from this book. We'll never know exactly what came first.
Okay.
At least at this moment, based off of how the story's going.
Yeah, it does give a bit of a necromancer warlock kind of feels, because those demon dogs kind of give off a bit of like a warlock vibe. The dead rose, so like that's clear necromancer kind of stuff. So it's in the middle.
I never really looked at the necromancy tree in 5e or how those characters are supposed to be able to work. Granted, Matt Mercer was the DM. He could easily, like, if he wants to say Delilah can raise armies of the dead, she can raise armies of the dead. That's pretty essential to it. We do see that sometimes her powers involve human sacrifice in order to do something like that. She sacrifices one of her servants in order to make this happen.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, it still could kind of go either way as far as that's concerned. There was some iconography missing, which I know myself and some other people that know the story are a little bit like, where was that? We were hoping for that tease, but sus Levi. The last couple things to go off of for this episode. I want to talk a little bit more about I'm going to say the woman in that cage at the end. So, who do you think that might be?
I don't have a single clue.
You don't have a single clue?
No, I was pausing Amazon like, what is the name? What is the name? I looked back at the credits twice to try to find it.
Yeah. So, we have seen her before. Her character is in there. That is one of the people that Percy listed on his guns. And is Dr. Anna Ripley. Now, this is a character who was introduced at this point when they were storming the castle. However, they've kind of jumped around because this character was originally explicitly disguised to not look like Anna. So it looks like in the name of plot, they are jumping straight into just getting into this conflict instead of having her playing cat and mouse with Percy, which, of course, would elongate the amount of time that they have to do things, and we only have 3 episodes left at this point.
Right. Also, I totally forgot that he went full no mercy on the thing.
Oh.
The mask was already on. The shadows are flowing.
Second he sees her, the gun's coming out, and he's ready to go.
Yeah.
Which kind of opens up an interesting tick. In the original, he had control over when he decided to kill somebody. I'm not 100% sure that this version of Percy has that. I'm pretty confident that they are going to have to do some shit in order to get him not to kill this woman.
Yeah. It's because it was what Vex that we heard at the very end, or
Yes.
yeah. If you ask me what I think might happen, they get him to stop, or just barely. Ripley somehow managed to persuade that she'll help them to the Briarwoods.
Yes.
Pull a fast one, leave, ditch, and then an exaggeration of words, 3v. Well, not really working with the Briarwoods, but like her own thing, and then the Briarwoods, and then Vox Machina.
Yeah. So there's certainly a couple thoughts there. I can neither confirm nor deny. However, I do think that one of the things that we're probably going to see, and again, this is not something that happened in the original, and we're getting a new taste of how this story is going to work. We had some heavy dialogue from Vax in the beginning of episode 7 of the next time you turn you turn that gun on any of us, I will kill you.
Yeah.
I think we might get a Vax v Percy going off the bat into this.
Gotta be honest, I would love to see that, just because any D&D game I played not really has ever been 1v1 against the players.
Yeah, you don't see 1v1 PvP too much. I mean, if your DM feels like it, you might get like this is a safe space to get dropped down to 0, you're in a stadium and you are fighting your teammates. But that is like, the DM has to specifically be like, I want to do this instead of like progressing the story on this one. Or maybe that's just how the story progresses in your campaign. I don't know. I don't know you. But interesting predictions. I am also curious to see how this is going to go, because we're in new territory now. This is being presented completely differently. And we're just going to have to kind of see where this goes. There's other bits to keep in mind here for just some general footnotes. Pike is very badass in this episode. We already touched on her saying fuck a lot.
Speaking of which, when she says that she's astral projecting and Grok says you're as what, I died laughing.
That was such a good joke.
Like, on beat, like almost no tone, like responses, they get me every time. It's
also, Travis Willingham is
Yeah.
the king of comedy on that. It's him and Sam Riegel, I think, are the two funniest fucking things. And you know what? No, I give it to Ashley Johnson, because at least in this most recent campaign, her character Fern has been nothing but a delight.
Oh my god, when she stole the little pendant thing from what was that, the second episode? One of those two? It was very early, but that was such a good moment.
Sir, that character steals everything. That is not specific enough.
Regardless of the recent news with campaign 3, I do want to keep watching it, just for the story wise.
It's and for new critters that are getting into it, I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of people that once they finish the show are either going to go and try to watch campaign 1, and good luck to you if you're starting from the beginning. Please start at the Briarwood arc.
Yeah, that's how Fandoms start. That's how League got like 10 more players with Arcane.
Oh yeah, the fandom's gonna get grossly big after this. But hopefully more people are coming to campaign 3 to keep up with something current and a little bit more accessible.
Yeah.
However, with that, let us know what you're thinking. Are you guys are any of you new critters? Or
yeah, me right here.
Yeah, we got one right here. Yeah, who are the new faces of the fandom? How are you guys feeling? Are we being like too critical of this show?
Are we spoiling you?
Are we spoiling? That is a fair assessment, but I think we'll just have to wait and find out. And again, really close to hopefully 500 subscribers. I don't know. Maybe at the end of this video we've hit that.
And before it's $4.99.
Oh man, that's let us know if it's $4.99 down in the comments. Anyway, stick around. We got plenty more content coming your way, and we got one episode of we got one batch of releases of Vox Machina left. We're going to talk about that, and then
Maybe reaction.
maybe reaction. Maybe we got some video essay things coming your way, because there's a lot to talk about with the show. This is no small feat. Anyway, I'm Ben. That's Jose, and we'll see you next time.
You think this works as a good outro, like you've been doing for AOT?
What?
The random monologue at the end.
I mean, bye-bye.